What's up guys? In a previous video, I foiled and shaped the surfboard blank into a longboard. In this video, I install some fin boxes, specifically Futures fin boxes. Now it's time to mark out the fin placement. I'm going to do a 2+1 system. I'm going to use 2 side bites and I'm going to use Future fin boxes. Futures or Future? Regardless. Those fin boxes, because I like this fin system the best. I've been using them for years. That's the fin system I like. I like that it's solid, although it is a little trickier to mount. But I have all kinds of videos on my channel on how to install these without using too many specialized tools. You could probably get away with doing this just with a Dremel if you wanted to. That's how I used to do it. So I'm going to mark out where the fin placement goes using this shaper square. I think a few different companies make it, but I gotta stick with the guys at Greenlight that hooked me up with this years ago, and I'm gonna use this to mark it out. I've already done it and marked it out, but I'm gonna show you how I do it. Although I'm not quite 100% sure how to use this properly, I might be using it wrong, but I get the results that I need using this. And of course, I'm gonna use a large fin box, a Bane box, for the third center fin. The installation of this is fairly simple. This doesn't go in until later, but I will mark it out now. This goes in after glassing. Then with this, I could put in a small fin if I want, just to ride it like a thruster, which it's a longboard, may not. Or I could put in a nice big long fin if I want to as well. Gives me maximum flexibility. Move the fin up and down, back and forth. All right, let's mark it out. I'm gonna do 5.5 from the tail for the main fin box in the center here for my center fin. Just going to trace this out. For the side bites, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the bottom. I'm going to overlap with the large fin box by 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Roughly. I made a mark here, and then I'm going to use my shaper square to transpose this mark to the 2 edges. So I've made this line here that I want to transpose, that I want to extend to the edge. So I'm going to use my shaper square, and the shaper square makes it super easy. I'm just going to line it up against any one of these vertical lines or stringer lines. I just happen to use the middle one here. So I've lined that up, so now I know that this will be square across. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little mark on either side here. That way I know where the edge is. I'm going to start to measure inward to get my next marks. Okay, now that I've made my 2 perpendicular marks to the stringer, now I know I measure in from these 2 spots. Then on this shaper square, I have this here distance from rail. So this distance from rail, I measure in from the rail from here, and I'm going to do 1.25 inches in. So I'm going to lay this up against the edge, and I'm going to take that circle and then make a mark. So now I line this up here, but then I need to make sure I line up this stringer mark with that midpoint mark I made earlier here, measuring down the fin box. Then I make a mark here in that hole, 1 1/4. Then I want to flip it around and then do the same on the other side. Very easy. And I've lined this side up, mid mark, make a mark. Now just so you guys can see this a bit better, I'm going to use a black marker and mark this a bit more than just using a pencil. I prefer not using a marker right away. I like the fine tip of a pencil just for a little more accuracy. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to mark it out with a marker. Now, next, on this shaper square, you have to now do the toe in for the side bites. So I'm going to do a 1/8 toe in. I'm not going to have a whole lot of toe in. I want to keep the drag down a little bit. So I'm going to use this And then I'm going to lay it down like that. So I measure, I line up this bottom hole here with this toe in, for this toe in. And then I line up the stringer to any one of these marks. These whole bunch of little lines. It just happens for me that it lines up right with the stringer mark on the shaper square, but it could be any one of these marks as well, depending on how wide your surfboard is. So stringer's lined up. Then I go here on this hole, and then I poke my pencil through and make a mark. And I'll do the other side, flip it around. I lay down my shaper square on this side. Line up my stringer here. That just happens to, again, it lines up on the stringer. And then, back over here, I make a mark. And that marks my toe in. I don't need to worry about the fin cant because the fin boxes look after that for me, or the fins look after that. Now I'm going to join these lines. I just marked this line a little bit more just so you guys can see it. I'm going to take my fin box, and the bottom of this fin box here, right here, I'm going to line it up with this bottom edge here. Now this is my own way of installing these future fin boxes, and I've had great success with it without having their really expensive kit. Now I tried to buy their expensive kit years ago, but I wasn't able to find it because it was out of stock, and I haven't really tried since. I guess I should, because I do make enough surfboards. But anyways, okay, now that I line up this bottom point and then up here, I want to make sure that the tip of the fin box here lines up in the middle too of this line that we drew out. And now we're going to just draw out this inside part of the fin box. This is all drawn out now, and that will be what I'm going to router out. And I have a template to do that, and I'll do that here in a bit. I made the template in a previous video, so I'll link that in the description, or you can find it on my channel. And it makes installing these fin boxes a breeze. We'll do the other side, and we'll start routering. I have this template for routering out a Futures fin box. It uses a bushing with a 1/4-inch router bit, and then the bushing rides up against this, and then the bit just routers out the center. So I'm just going to clamp this down onto the outline that we made earlier. Try to keep it centered. Just a piece of pad and some wood so I don't damage the foam. I'm going to use my clamp and just gently clamp this. We want to keep this all centered as much as possible. So I got my compact router here, and here's the bushing. So this bushing right here rides up against my template. The 1/4-inch router bit routers out the foam. Very, very simple. They use this for making inlays and all kinds of stuff. Also, I have this depth gauge that I made. I routed out what a Futures fin box depth would be, and that's how I set the depth of the router bit. So then I take the equivalent of the template thickness and I lay that on top, and then I take my router, so then I take it and I lay it down, I put it down into it, set the depth, and then I lock it in place. Boom, done. That's the depth that I need. Looks great. Next, take your fin box, I'm just gonna fit it in temporarily like that. Just gonna draw out the outline real quick. All this is for is just as reference for when we do the routering out of the top piece, this top flange. And then I have a template for the flange, and I have marks lined up for the center, which I didn't do correctly on the other one because I forgot, but that's okay. And now we'll just line these lines up here and then clamp it down and route it out. Set the depth. Alright, there we have it, a perfectly routed out fin box. Futures get glassed in, by the way, if I haven't said that earlier, which I don't think I did. So we're gonna tape this over and then lay fiberglass. I'll do the other side and then we'll start glassing pretty much. Going to give the fin boxes a quick wipe down with some acetone, and then we're going to just glue them in before we do any glassing. Just wipe off any oils. So what I'm doing now is going to mix up some epoxy, and then I'm going to glue in the fin box. The big thing is make sure when you were routering out or making a hole for the fin box here, if you didn't do a very good job and there's a lot of gaps between the fin box and the foam, what can happen is if you have too much epoxy pooling in any one spot and not much is displaced by the fin box itself, what will happen is the buildup of epoxy, if there's too much, it can get really hot and it's possible it can melt the foam. So you want to either fill that with a little bit of, say, fiberglass mesh just to take up the volume, or make sure to use a slow hardener with your epoxy. And I'm just checking by inserting the fin box in here that epoxy's hitting all of it, which it is. Alright, next, it's time to seal the board. Now that we got the profile done, we got the fin boxes installed, I put a handle in it. Now I'm just going to blow this off with some compressed air, and then we're going to seal the board. Okay, I've blown off the board with compressed air, vacuumed it all up, cleaned it up really well. Now it's time to seal the board. Sealing the board is really important because I'm going to do a tint job on this board, and what sealing the board does is it helps make the board so that it's not as porous. So this EPS foam has a tendency to absorb a bit of resin, so it can make the board a little heavy as well, so you don't want to minimize your resin use. And the second reason, which I actually did a video on this, is about, I'm going to do a tint job on this. So if there's holes or little divots or picks or nicks in the foam, if you're just applying a clear resin, it's not a big deal because you're not going to get a buildup of colored resin. When you have resin that's colored, when it builds up, what ends up happening is it becomes much more darker in those spots where there's a divot. So you want to seal the board so it's nice and homogeneous all the way through, so you get a nice consistent tint job. So that's why I'm going to seal the board as well. I like using this stuff here. This is Polyfilla. LePage makes it. It's the big hole filler. This is a couple years old. I'm pretty sure they still make this stuff, but you can buy purpose stuff just for sealing the board. Greenlight Surf Supply, who is sponsoring this build series, who sponsored me with this surfboard blank, you can buy their stuff as well. You mix it with distilled water and you make a slurry, and then you coat the board with it. Same with this stuff here. I'm going to mix it with distilled water. Important to use distilled water because there's no minerals, there's no, it's just pure water. So that way it won't yellow over time. I've had experience in the past using different types of compounds, and I found this stuff I had the best experience with. It just stays white over time. All right, let's seal the board. Start glassing. So you can see how bright white that is. Look how white it is, but it's very, very thick and pasty. So what I did was I mixed it with some distilled water, and so now I have this slurry. So it's kind of like that. And I used distilled water, as I said. Also, you can mask off the stringer so you don't get any sealer on it. Now that the board is sealed, it's time to just give it a quick once over with some sandpaper, smooth out any bumps or ridges, and then vacuum it up, clean it up, dust it off. There'll be time to glass. Alrighty, that's it for this video. In the next video, I glassed the longboard. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video.